everyone, welcome to a new video. Today's video is going to be all about colorful eyeshadow palettes, and of course, just the day that I'm deciding to talk about colorful eyeshadow palettes, I'm wearing a neutral eyeshadow look. Oh well, that's my life, I guess. But you will have seen me wear a couple of colorful eyeshadow looks in some of my previous videos. One of my goals for 2018 was to try and wear more color on my eyes rather than just like brown tone neutrals, because that's my go-to. Maybe a bit of pink and berry toned here and there, a bit of mauve, but I usually keep it quite safe. So I definitely wanted to explore rainbow color palettes. I didn't have too many. And so I decided to also do a video on some of my favorite palettes and also show you a couple of the palettes that I'm still very much hoping to test out very, very soon. This video is still part of my eyeshadow palette series that I'm doing this month. August is palette month here on my channel as well as on my blog. We're still like gearing up to the grand finale, so please stay tuned if you want to see more of me. Let's talk about some colorful eyeshadow palettes. So I've selected 10 different colorful eyeshadow palettes, 5 more affordable and 5 more high-end / more expensive. Now, when it comes to colorful eyeshadow palettes, I do want to put something out there that in order for a palette to be colorful to me, it doesn't necessarily mean rainbow. There are definitely going to be a couple of rainbow palettes in here, don't get me wrong, but they're also going to be just palettes that have a certain color story to them. So that's something to bear in mind. Case in point, the very first palette I'd like to talk to you about, this is the Sleek Garden of Eden palette. I already showed the Calm Before the Storm one in one of my other videos, so I wanted to show you something different again in this one. But this is the green tone palette. Sadly, they discontinued this. I'm very, very sorry. Maybe you can still find it on eBay. I don't know, but this comes with 5 absolutely gorgeous green shades. And then you have these like mauve-y neutrals at the top. This is a very wearable eyeshadow palette, despite the fact that it has a lot of shimmer. And I think that Sleek is definitely one of the eyeshadow palette brands that do some really interesting color stories. They seem to have discontinued pretty much all of them now. I could only find like 4 or 5 anymore on their website. So sadly, Sleek has been discontinuing a lot of their palettes, but they used to do some really interesting color stories and some great eyeshadow palettes that came with like an array of colors that did kind of like tell a story together, which is very, very interesting. And I'm really curious to see where Sleek will be taking their eyeshadow palettes in the future, now that they seem to have discontinued so many of them. Now, another affordable palette is this one, and I've just recently been testing this out. This is the NYX Ultimate Brights palette, and I bought this off of a recommendation of a friend of mine. Some of these are a bit chalky, a little bit patchy. This orangey shade right here wouldn't stick to my lid unless I use a sticky base. So this is definitely an eyeshadow palette that needs a little bit of extra care, a little bit extra TLC for it to work very well. But over NYX Milk Pencil, for instance, a white base, white sticky base, this works really well, and these colors go on very vibrant. This is a little bit pricey for drugstore, I'd say. It's right around the €20 mark here in the Netherlands, I think, so it's a little bit up there in price, but I do really like the array of colors you get in here. The only thing I wish they would have in this is shimmer, so I'm really hoping that NYX can come out with a shimmer version of this. That would be fun. Now then I have another palette, which I have to say it doesn't look very used because I don't use it a lot. When I was in the US a few years ago, I spotted this, and this was part of one of their limited edition collections. This is in Boardwalk Boozing, and these palettes, these shades are actually quite pigmented, I have to say. Let me swatch one for you. This blue looks actually really nice. It has a really nice lime green, some purple here as well. So I did really like this. I thought it looked really interesting, but I can't really attest to the quality of this. It swatches very nicely. These are very soft though. So I believe Tati reviewed these at the time, and then they shattered completely. This is definitely an older release by Wet n Wild, so I'm pretty sure you can no longer get that. But since this is a video on colorful eyeshadows, I wanted to make sure I included as much as I could. And this has some really interesting shades. I just don't reach for that a lot. Now, if you think the NYX one is quite expensive, then maybe look into this, the Juvia's Place Zulu palette. In my opinion, it's one of the best colorful eyeshadow palettes that I've tried so far. And this is also what I was holding up in my thumbnail. This has some really, really fun, fun shades. You only get a pop of warm brown, and then maybe this peachy with a gold shimmer can be deemed a neutral, but there's nothing in here that isn't really bright. I was able to pull some stunning looks out of this. I really like this turquoise, like aqua shimmer shade. The purple is really nice. This like corally pink, almost like a red, but not quite. This sheared out really nicely, I have to say, and I really like these looks as well. You can make a warm toned look with this or a cool toned look. In terms of colorful eyeshadow, I think that at this moment, it doesn't really get much better than this, and it's actually cheaper than the NYX one. If you are in Europe, however, the best place to get this from is Beauty Bay, and there it's like 25 euros, so then it's a little bit more expensive. But if you're in the US, this retails for $17.50, which is an absolute steal, and the pans are massive. Now, talking about massive pans and a massive palette, I could not mention the Juvia's Place, the Magic palette. This is a little bit more expensive, but I feel that I think they're now doing this in a small version as well, so they're a little bit cheaper. I think these retail for about 35 euros off of the Beauty Bay website, I'm not sure. But I absolutely loved this palette when I was playing around with it. Ooh, it's about the size of my head. That's how big this is. You do get a couple of neutrals. Yeah, this one in a warm tone brown, and then you have this like light shade, and then you get this gold. This looks like a very light pink in the viewfinder, but it's actually a really intense shimmer, so it's not as neutral as you might think. You get some warm tones at the top, but then you get these really fun cool tones at the bottom as well. This probably looks pretty smoky and sultry to you, but I really like how these colors are laid out. You get some really nice, like really deep purpley blue shades here as well. This is a teal with a lot of like green shimmer to it, which is really stunning. And I really like these like flashy pops of like silver and purple here as well. A lot of people complain about this shade, that it's very tough to work with, and it is a little bit more stiff, I find. But I do have to say that if you build it up with a flat packer brush, it does really work, and then it can blend out quite nicely. So this eyeshadow palette, because it has the warm tones and the cool tones, it may not be the most like rainbow, like ooh, fun shade range that is out there, but I really do appreciate the colors that are in this palette. So those were the more affordable eyeshadow palettes, and now I'd like to talk to you about some more expensive ones. The first one that I'd like to show you is one of my custom Freedom palettes by Inglot. I do not know the shade names of these by heart. I will have to look it up. This is a palette that I built years ago. This was when I first started off with makeup, but these are all the colors that I wanted at the time. Currently, I'm mostly reaching for these like purples and lavenders at the bottom still, because I just really like purples, lavenders, and like periwinkles. These two shades together are stunning, but I also put in a matte yellow, a matte coral, and a matte minty green. So this is my pastel palette, you could say. I also put in a matte white, so I can like mix and match these as well and sort of dull them down a bit more and make them true pastels if I want to. So that's how I use this palette mostly, and I think that in terms of colorful eyeshadows, if you can't find it in a palette, then going with singles may be your best bet. These are the ones I have the most experience with. I haven't really played around much with my ColourPop singles yet, but I got those in very bright shades precisely because I wanted to experiment a little bit more with color. Now we're sticking with Inglot for a while because I also have another eyeshadow palette by Inglot. This consists of two palettes, but I use it as one. But I did buy these in separate goes, so that's why they're in two different palettes. This was the first one I made. This was also the very first time I tried Inglot. And this is sort of like my fall-winter palette. The other palette is more of like my spring-summertime palette. And these are more like my winter and fall shades. There are neutrals in here, but what I really like about this palette is this purple and this matte teal. Where on earth are you going to find a matte teal that is that intense? I mean, this is such a great shade. And if you have brown, well, my eyes are brown, but they pull a little bit more hazel depending on how the light hits them. And I find that with a shade like this, my eyes just truly pop. Now, because I felt that palette was missing a few shades, I made this a little bit later. So again, you have neutrals in here. But I also put in a navy and like a darker purple because I felt it would go very nicely with some of these. I actually brought that palette to the store to see how I could all like put it all together. This navy is one of the best navies I own. Navy blue is a color that I just love on my eyes, especially in the fall winter time. So those Inglot palettes have some really nice color stories that of course you can build yourself. So this next one is a bit of a wild card because I haven't really tried this on my eyes yet. However, I have tried other Huda Beauty eyeshadows that I absolutely love. So I have very, very high hopes for the Electric Obsessions palette. This is, if you don't want like a very large palette or super large pans, then this is a really nice, cute little palette to try. It has more of that like rainbow color scheme to it. Again, you get a teal. I love a good matte teal. Those are like my favorites. We also get a hot pink, a nice magenta shade. You get this like raspberry red, which is nice, a bright coral, and then you have like more of like a blue and then like a purple, and you get an aqua shade and of course a matte yellow, which I think is going to be a very nice color story to play around with. Huda Beauty eyeshadows can be quite expensive, but these retail for $27, I believe. And if you don't live in the US, you can get this from Cult Beauty as well, and they ship internationally. A palette that you can no longer get, sadly, because this was limited edition, and this palette got so much slack when it came out. This is the Urban Decay Full Spectrum palette. I think that if you're an average consumer, like I don't own any of the Sugar Pill palettes or eyeshadows or anything like that. Those do very much capture my interest, but I looked at it and the expense of building a palette like that is just so much money. Whereas something like this just has very similar shades. And yes, do they need a lot of love and a lot of TLC for them to work? They do. But it's a rainbow palette that works really well apart from this one orange shade at the top. I mean, I keep saying that whenever I talk about this palette. Maybe you can still hunt this down on eBay, I'm not sure, but this was limited edition for Christmas like 2 years ago, so this has been out a while. You only get a couple of like grays and whites on this side, and other than that, there is not a single neutral in this entire palette, which I love because it just really pulls me out of my comfort zone. All of the shades at the top and all of the shades in the middle row are excellent. It's in this lighter row that there are a couple of problematic shades, so especially Jones and Metamorphosis. But I happen to have a Kiko eyeshadow stick that's exactly this shade. If you have a Kiko, if you have access to Kiko, find the eyeshadow stick in like this light periwinkle blue shade. I forget the number of it all the time, but it matches this one perfectly. Put this on, layer this over it, and you're good to go. And then the final eyeshadow palette. So everything I showed you so far has been also quite colorful all around. However, a palette that I think is really nice, and I'm not sure if you can still get this because I thought it was limited edition, but then when I got it, it was first out of stock and then it came back in stock, so I'm not sure what the deal is with this palette. But this is the Pure My Little Pony The Movie palette. So this was limited edition for that My Little Pony movie that came out. If you want to explore using colors, but you're a bit nervous, then this may be a good one to try because you get a pop of hot pink and a red and a purple and a green and a blue and a yellow, but you also get a gold and you get a matte brown and you get a like mauve-y transition shade and you get a matte white. You get a minty green shade. So what this palette does very well, I think, is blend neutrals and colors together for those people who are nervous about using colors on their eyes. This was such a great sort of like way of like dipping your toe into color. Like just a touch, but not too much. And what's even better about this palette is that it's laid out. Even though it looks very haphazard, if you start really looking closely at this palette, you can see that it has quads. It has a quad this way. It has a quad this way. It has another quad this way. It has another quad that way. But that's not where it stops because you have a quad this way, this way, this way, and this way. And if you truly want to be adventurous, you can even go diagonal in the palette. So this is a very cleverly laid out palette that has enough neutrals so that you can do like a neutral look with a pop of color. You can stick to the quads as they are laid out in the palette. Of course you can do that, but you don't necessarily have to. I just like bounced around this palette when I used it. So if you are still able to get this and you want to explore using color, dip your toe in, as I said, and this is a good one to look into. So those were 10 colorful eyeshadow palettes that I wanted to show you in this video. I have definitely had a lot of fun so far in 2018, trying out more colorful eyeshadow looks and trying out new eyeshadow palettes and formulas with that as well. I have been having a lot of fun playing around with these, making colorful eyeshadow looks. I've been posting them a lot on my Instagram lately, so make sure you check that. I will put the link in the description bar for you so you can check out some of the makeup looks I did with some more color on my eyes than I'm wearing today. So yeah, without further ado, this is the end of the video. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a thumbs up if you liked it, and subscribe because I make new videos every single Thursday and Sunday. And very, very soon we're working on towards this grand finale of this August palette month. So that's coming up, which will be my full eyeshadow palette collection video. So I really hope you enjoy watching this video. Thank you very much for being here, and I hope to see you in my next one. Bye!
I